Welcome to this lesson on parts of an algebraic expression. Please make sure you have these notes in front of you so we can begin our lesson. And my students, let's make sure we update our table of contents. The learning objective for today says, I can identify the different parts of an algebraic expression. Let's go ahead and talk about some of the vocabularies for this lesson. But before we do that, let me go ahead and write down this algebraic expression. 2x plus 3x plus 4y plus 12. So once again, this is an algebraic expression because it has numbers, it has an operation sign, and it has variables. So let's talk about the different parts of this algebraic expression. The first part of this is called a variable. And a variable is a letter that represents an unknown value. So in our algebraic expression below, the variables are x and y. So we've got two variables. So x and y are our variables. Those are the unknowns. The second part of this algebraic expression is called a term. A term is a number, variable, or product of a number and a variable. And terms are usually separated by pluses or minus signs. So for example, this is one term because that's a product of a number and a variable. Separated by another plus sign is another term. Here's another term and another term. So this particular algebraic expression had four terms. The first term was 2x, the second term was 3x, the next term is 4y, and the last term was 12. So there are four terms here. Let's go ahead and talk about the constant, which is the next part of my algebraic expression. And constants are terms that only contain numbers. So if you take a look at our algebraic expression below, the only term that contains a number is 12. Because 12 only has a number, so we'll call that a constant. It's not going to change, it's always going to stay 12. So I'm going to write 12 down here, because the 12 is the constant in my algebraic expression. This is 2x is not a constant because there's a variable next to it. 3x is not a constant because there's a variable next to it. 4y is not a constant because there's a variable next to it. The variables change the value of each term. The next part of this algebraic expression is called like terms. Like terms are constants or terms that have the same variables. So according to my algebraic expression below, the only like terms that I have would be 2x and 3y. And these are like terms because they have the same exact variable. So 3x and 2x are like terms because they have the same exact variable. It's not the same as 4y because 4y has a y, and y and x's are two different letters. The 12 is a constant. But there's not another term that is a constant that it's like with. So I can't say that 12 is a like term because there's no other constant terms in my algebraic expression. The last part of our algebraic expression is called a coefficient. And the coefficient is the number multiplied by the variable. Or you can also look at it as the number in front of the variable. So the numbers in front of the variable would be 2. Because 2 is in front of x. So that's a coefficient. Another coefficient that I have would be 3, because the 3 is the number in front of the variable. And another coefficient that I have would be 4, because the 4 is in front of the variable, y. So all of those numbers are being multiplied by the variable. The 2 is being multiplied by the x. The 3 is being multiplied by the x. And the 4 is being multiplied by the y. So all of those are called coefficients because they are in front of the variable. So let's use these key concepts to discuss the following examples. Example 1 says, classify each expression as either a numerical or algebraic expression. So let's go ahead and think of these as little tiles, and we're going to click and drag each tile into the appropriate box. So let's take a look at our first box, which says 120m. Well, 120m has a variable in it. So I'm going to go ahead and click and drag that. I'm going to cross it out, and I'm going to place that inside of my algebraic expression because the variables say this is an algebraic expression, and m is the variable. So 120m will go in the right box. Now I'm going to go and look at the second box, which says 40 times 30. There's no variable in there, so I know that this is a numerical expression. So I'm going to write 40 times 30 in the numerical expression box. The next one I'm going to go ahead and look at is the tile that says 3x minus 4y plus 2z. I know that that is an algebraic expression because there are letters in this expression. So 3x minus 4y plus 2z, this tile will go in the algebraic expression column, and let's cross that out once we use it. The next one, 1 plus 1, well, there's no variables there, so I know that this is an algebraic expression, so this is 1 plus 1 in the numerical expression box. The next one says 5 parentheses, or 5 times the quantity of d plus 1. I know that that has a variable, which is d, so I'm going to go ahead and place that in my algebraic expression box. And I'm going to write 5 parentheses d plus 1, because there's the variable, so that is called an algebraic expression. And our last one is 14 times 15. No variables there, so that is called a numerical expression. So 14 times 15, that tile will go in this box. And let's cross it out once we use it. So once again, the tiles on the left-hand side have no variables. The tiles on the right-hand side contain variables. So go ahead and pause the video and complete this guided problem, and we'll discuss the answers in class tomorrow. Example 2 says, in the algebraic expression, identify the following. So they're giving us the algebraic expression that says x plus 13. We know this is an algebraic expression because it has a variable, it has an operation sign, which is the plus sign, and it has the number 13. So the first thing we need to identify is what's the coefficient. And if you remember back to the vocabulary slide, a coefficient says it's the number in front of the variable, or it's the number being multiplied by the variable. So the thing about this problem is that there is no number in front of the variable. So this is a kind of a special case problem. If you look at the variable, there's no number in front of it. But I want you to think of it as an imaginary one standing right next to it. It's kind of like your guardian angel. You can't see it, but you know he's there, or she's there. So anytime that x or any variable is by itself, the coefficient is going to be 1. The second part we're going to identify is the variable. So we know that the variable in this algebraic expression is x, and that's the only variable in this algebraic expression. The next one is the constant, and we know that the constant is a term that only contains numbers. So the term that only contains numbers is 13. So 13 is the constant. And the next part, it says, how many terms do we have? So we've got, let's see, here's one term. It's being separated by a plus sign, and here's the second term. So we have 2 terms here. And the 2 terms are 1x and 13. And those are the 2 terms of this problem. So in example 3, it says, in the algebraic expression, identify the following. And we know that this is an algebraic expression because it has numbers, it has variables, and it has operation signs. So our job is to identify the different parts of this algebraic expression. So let's start off with the coefficient. Remember, the coefficient is the number that is being multiplied by the variable. Or you can think of it as the number in front of the variable. So let's go ahead and take a look at our first term. In this term, we do have a variable, and we do have a number in front of that variable, and that number is the 2. So 2 is a coefficient. Let's take a look at another term. We do have a variable, but there's no number in front of it. But we can think of it as an imaginary 1 standing right in front of it. So the second coefficient of this algebraic expression is 1. If you look at the third term, it's a constant, and there's no variables in there, so we don't have any coefficients. Let's go ahead and take a look at the variables now. We know that the variable in the first term was z, and there's another variable which we'll call y. Those are the unknowns. For the next part, which is the constant, it's the term that only contains a number, and the only term that contains a number here is 3. So let's go ahead and take a look at our terms. We've got one term here Separated by a plus sign, we have another term right here. Separated by another plus sign, we've got another term. So we've got three terms here. So let's write three terms. And the three terms are 2z to the second power, 1y, and 3. Those are the three terms. For example 4, it says in the algebraic expression, identify the following. So what I do want to do for this problem is let's go ahead and change it up a little bit, because I feel like we should show you some things that could trick you a little bit. So instead of putting a plus sign there, let's go ahead and make that look like another minus sign right there. So our algebraic expression should say 12m minus 7h minus 3. So go ahead and change that last part of this problem. So let's take a look at our first part of this, which is the coefficient. A coefficient is the number that is being multiplied by the variable. So here in our first term we've got 12m. And 12 is the number in front of the variable, and it's being multiplied by m. So 12 is my first coefficient. Let's take a look at our second one. Remember, terms are separated by addition signs or minus signs. In our second term, we've got 7h. So most of us want to think, okay, so 7 is going to be our coefficient because that's the number being multiplied by h. The only difference is it needs to take the sign in front of it. So this sign right here is a negative sign or a minus sign. It's the same exact thing. So the coefficient is not 7. The coefficient should be negative 7 because it needs to take the sign that's in front of it. Let's go ahead and talk about our variables now. Our variables are m, because in the first term we had an m, and in our second term we had an h. Now let's talk about our constant. Our constant is the term that only contains a number. Now if you look at our last term, we only have a term that contains a number. So most of us want to think, well, the term is going to be 3. But remember, we need to take the sign that's in front of it. And there's a negative sign in front of it. Right here. So we need to bring it with it. So the constant is not 3. The constant is negative 3. So let's ask ourselves, how many terms were there? Well, the first term was this one right here. Separated by a minus sign, the second term is negative 7h. And then separated by another minus sign, the third term is negative 3. So there are three terms here. And the three terms are 12m, comma, negative 7h, comma, negative 3. So go ahead and pause the video, complete the got it problems, and we'll discuss the answers in class tomorrow. Notice there are two got it problems on this slide. We've got it problem B, and we've got it problem C. Example 5, in the algebraic expression, it says identify the following. So this one's a little bit of a tricky one because they're giving us x divided by 5 plus 3. So let's take a look at our coefficients. The coefficient will be the number in front of the variable. So in our last examples, we already talked about the variable having a number in front of it. This one doesn't, but we can assume that there's an imaginary one in front of it. So most of us will think, well, in this problem, the coefficient is going to be 1. Well, the difference is it's not 1 because it's being divided by 5. Now remember, this is a fraction, and you want to make sure you take into account the denominator because this is still part of a term. So the coefficient is not 1. The coefficient is going to be 1/5 because 1 is being divided by 5. The one that stands next to the x is being divided by 5. So the coefficient, which is the number in front of the variable, is 1/5. Here the variable is x, which is the only variable in this problem. The constant is positive 13 because that's the only term that contains numbers. Then it says how many terms are in this algebraic expression. Well, this algebraic expression has one term here, and it's separated by a plus sign. Here's the second term. So this has two terms. And the two terms are 1x over 5, and the second term is positive 13. Those are the two terms in this problem. So go ahead and pause the video and complete this got it problem, and we'll discuss the answers in class tomorrow. So we've just completed this lesson. Let's go ahead and self-rate yourself and let us know how you feel. If there's any part of this problem or video that you do not understand, please go back and rewatch it again. Also come to class with some questions so we can discuss it in further detail.